News Channel 5 Network. This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. We have a very special guest on the show today. It's former Tennessee Governor and Nashville Mayor Phil Bredesen. Governor, thank you for joining us. It's always an honor to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
I want to talk today in this conversation a little bit about some of the stories that are in the news right now, but also use this conversation to sort of reflect back on your career, in particular your time in both mayor and governor. But I want to start with your first political involvement, which was back in 1968 when you were a volunteer for Eugene McCarthy when he was running for president back then. So you got clean for Gene?
Yeah, I didn't actually have to. I was pretty clean back then. But you know, if you were a college student at the time or a young person like that, that's just kind of what you did. Went out there and knocked down some doors for them. Not that it did any good.
Now, at that point, you had finished Harvard. You had your degree in physics. You'd done a little work in the defense industry. What got you interested in politics, and did you back Gene McCarthy because of opposition to the Vietnam War?
I think it was a combination of all those things. I mean, when you're that young, I'm not sure those decisions are all, you know, this very logical thing about exactly how you want to spend your time. But I had come to college with no interest in politics. I mean, when I was in high school, I had no interest in it whatsoever. But you couldn't have been at Harvard in the 1960s without getting kind of immersed in, in the subject. And when the opportunity came to do something like that, I did it, and I liked him. And
you met him.
And I met him, although only briefly, but I did meet him.
Now, he did well in New Hampshire, well enough to knock an incumbent president to decide Lyndon Johnson was not going to run for re-election in 1968. Right. But then others got in the race, and ultimately Vice President Hubert Humphrey got the nomination. Right. Lots of McCarthyites were very disappointed, disillusioned in politics about that. Did you go back into a period of dissolution?
No, and as a matter of fact, I have to this day, when I talk to young people, use that experience as an example of politics. It's not just about the arm waving of campaigns, that there's an element of it. You got to settle down and do things. I mean, I think my generation kind of failed in the sense that we'll find, so they didn't win with, a Gene McCarthy, and then they got all disillusioned, went off, and we got Richard Nixon, and you know what happened. So I just tell people, look, it's really important in these things to, it's not all glamorous stuff, that politics is not about the ideal. It's about choices among some limited people and limited choices, and you got to be willing to make them.
Well, the very next year in 1969, you ran for the state senate in Massachusetts. You lost to an incumbent. Why did you decide at that point you wanted to go being a volunteer, knocking on doors, to actually being the candidate?
I just, I wanted to do it. That was probably the worst campaign anybody has ever run for a political office in Massachusetts or anywhere else. But
what did you learn from that helped you when you came to Nashville?
It's just probably not a lot. It was not a competent campaign. It was against a fellow who was just he was the golden boy of the kind of Republican Party there, and the interesting outcome of it was, though, that his name was Ron McKenzie. I remember it well, and he beat me some enormous number. And a couple, 3 years later, I came back to Boston and got in a cab and saw an article on the front page of the paper that he'd just been sentenced to jail. It turned out he wasn't quite as clean as as his image was, but that worked out much for the better. It gave me a chance to get going in life with some stuff and get a family and start going, and worked out fine.
You came to Nashville in 1975. Your wife Andrea actually was looking at health care at that time.
Right.
She had a job opportunity with Hospital Corporation of America. You drove in a very different Nashville 40 years ago.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions, and what did you think you'd gotten into? Did you like coming to Nashville?
Actually, I liked it. I mean, the big thing I remember is that there were a lot of the sort of city amenities, restaurants, and that kind of stuff that you just didn't have. And we were a young couple and like to do that kind of thing, but obviously over the years that's changed dramatically. But we liked it. We found it very friendly and accepting. She worked for HCA, and then eventually I, probably after 6 months or thereabouts, went to work for hospital affiliates there and enjoyed the company and the job. And I can't honestly say when we came here that I thought we were going to spend the rest of our life here, but it's worked out great.
In your remotest thoughts or dreams did you ever think about being back in politics, being mayor of this city and then governor of this state?
You know, I didn't at the time, and particularly that period when I was unemployed. I mean, for about 6 months, Andrea had a job and I didn't. You know, I was down to the library and wringing my hands about what I was going to do with myself. And at the time, you know, the idea of if you could ever be in the U.S. Congress, that would be the ultimate thing. I feel very differently today, but you know, but I thought about that, and you know, then got off and started my company, and so. But when I started Health America and after it got sold, the thing I didn't want to do was do what I've seen so many people do, which is you have a little financial success in your 40s and then you spend the rest of your life, which is probably the most productive part of your life, just reprising the same thing over and over again, you know, start another company and do that. So I just, you know, that for me was a chance to just say, well, I'm going to do something different.
Former Governor and Nashville Mayor Phil Bredesen is our guest on Inside Politics. We continue our conversation with him after this break.